now, Apple is at 210, right? And to be honest with you, when you're doing hedges, that matters. If you're doing speculative strategies, it doesn't matter where the stock is at when we do it, right? It matters where it's at later on. So right now, we're going to first buy 100 shares of Apple at $210 a share. Um, Now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what option strategy that I put up here. We always, when we have stock and we have an option, the stock always dominates. You can't let the option tail wag the stock dog. And so when you buy stock, you are bullish. And so it doesn't matter what comes next. Now, I like to use a T, but whatever kind of floats your boat.
I use a T as well.
Okay, so if you can get track money, in other words, you're not fumbling around tracking money in and out of the account, however you do it, and you're good at contract specifications. At the time that light goes on, then you're in very, very good shape in terms of the strategies, right? So we just take this. I call this the setup. So before we even read the question, we just, as we go along, say, okay, I like to use dollars out. Some people like to use debit. Some people like to use a minus sign, whatever floats your boat. But again,
I just use, plus minus.
Yeah, because if you're using plus minus or whatever, I like that because, that's kind of the key. So let's just put there that we're out 210 for the Apple. Now, I suggest you do things on a per share basis. And then when you're all done, say, okay, what's going on? Now, the first key thing that I want you to understand is that when we buy an option, when we buy the stock, we're interested in the option that allows us to do the offset. So what I mean by that is if we have bought the stock, what we're interested in is being able to sell the stock. And that will give us a 50-50 because we know that if we're selling the stock, it's either going to be B, I'll put B choice, short call, or it's going to be a long put. And the reason I know that is because we're trying to offset, right? So we're either going to create an obligation to sell the stock that we own, or we're going to establish the choice to sell the stock that we own. I say, Gina, one of the reasons you might want to consider selling an option is to get paid to do something you're already prepared to do. And if I told you right now, Gina, that if you will agree to sell Apple at 215, somebody will give you 9 points to agree to sell at 215 stock you just bought at 210. What I'm suggesting we might want to do, Gina, is generate additional income. We might want to generate additional income. Now, what I mean by additional income is Apple pays a dividend. Not much, but it pays a dividend. And so, if I'm a Vanguard customer and I have stocks in my account and I'm interested in generating some additional income, I might want to consider a covered call. A covered call. Covered because I actually have the stock in the account. And that's a much, much different thing than agreeing to sell stock you don't have, right? So there's two versions of a call contract where you agree to sell stock you don't own, a naked call, and you agree to sell stock you do own. And this is one of the most conservative option strategies because we're agreeing to sell stock we own. So now let's say you buy 100 shares of Apple 210 and you write, sometimes we call a covered call a buy right. Now, don't be looking for tricks. But, there's no such thing as being partially naked. We can only write one contract because we only have 100 shares of Apple, right? So if we write two contracts, you would tell me on the test that's unlimited risk. As your broker, I say, Gina, you can't oblige yourself to sell 200 shares if you only have in your Vanguard account 100 shares. You can only write as many contracts as you have stock. Now, remember, each of these contracts governs 100 shares, right? That's called the multiplier. Now
Mhm.
we got to decide how long are we willing to sell the apple? Gina, the longer we agree to oblige ourselves to deliver the Apple stock in your Vanguard account, the more money we'll get. Longer term option contracts always have greater premiums.
Mhm.
It makes sense, right? If I'm going to be agreed to be a potential victim for a longer
Mhm.
term, I'm going to want some money. So we're going to write one Apple. Let's say this is August. We'll go out to December. Okay, so we're going to write one Apple December. Now we got to be careful because this is the major disadvantage of a covered call. We don't participate past the strike price. The way I think of this, Gina, is this where people get hung up is options are about floors and ceilings. And this is going to be a ceiling. Our gain is going to be capped. So we're going to agree to sell the Apple at 215. And as I said, we will get some big money for that because Apple is a pretty volatile stock. Now, where most people get hung up, and I don't want to put out negative vibes, but where most people get hung up on this thing is they're good at the basics. They go, oh, yeah, Dean, my break even's 224. I got unlimited risk and I can make $900. I go, Gina, that would be correct if this was a naked or covered, a naked call or uncovered call. No. As I said, what we got to remember is that when we have stock and options, the stock dominates. That's what's going on. You're not selling the call, you own the stock. Now, I like to, again, what Dean likes to do is not testable, but I like to spend a lot of time on what I call the initial setup. So, test phraseology, your customer buys 100 shares of Apple at 210 per share and writes one Apple December 215 call at 9. It looks like I probably should clean up my thing here. Boom. I'm going to clean that up, clean that up. And so, boom. Now we go here. And we're going to buy 100 shares. And this is important for us as a testing. The first thing you want to look at is, does the question have the stock in it?
Mhm.
I mean, because if that doesn't have the stock, it's an entirely different thing, right? Now
So
you end up with the
I'm
stock.
always
Yeah.
I'm always trying to like look for rules. So, and that's one thing like with the cover calls and like with the hedging. So, if there's a stock and it's not an option contract with two sides, if there's stock, is that basically a hedging position?
That's exactly. Well, I'm fighting you a little bit on the word hedge because what hedge means uh, is offset risk. And so if we're
Mhm.
looking for protection, I'm going to show that to you next. So
Okay.
what I mean by that, let me just get this fixed.
And then I also have on my options chart, just
Uh-huh.
because you had tutored my desk mate, and I have like, the income strategies with the hedging strategies
Yeah, that's
and
what. So you're right on. So when you use the word hedge, I mean we do use that word for having the stock, but we have what are called partial hedges and full hedges. So if you want protection, you're going to buy the put. I'm going to show that to you next. So
okay.
two things we can do. We can be interested in a partial hedge. What I mean by a partial hedge is we're going to lower our out-of-pocket costs. The floor is still zero, but remember, we're now writing one Apple December 215 call at 9. And that is going to lower out-of-pocket costs and therefore do give us some price decline protection. What I mean by price decline protection, I'm going to show that to you here presently in just a moment, is we've now brought in 9 points for selling that option. Right now, this is our first test question. What is our break even? Now, I told you the most common mistake people have is they don't distinguish between whether they're looking at the test, a speculative position where the matrix works, or where they're working at a hedge where the matrix doesn't work so well. I mean, it always means if you're short a call, you have an obligation to deliver the stock. But remember, you can't be focused on that 215 call at 9. That is not 224. It's not unlimited loss. It's not limited gain. No, because when we have stock and options, the stock dominates. And so we have brought in 9 points. Now, if you get good at tracking money, and this is our first test question, you can just shop the answer set for whatever the break even being offered to you is. And so you can say, okay, well, break even ultimately is the number that makes the columns balance.
Mhm.
Right. And so that your point, this is a partial hedge because now we don't lose money unless Apple goes below 201. This is the one time and the one time only. The one time and the one time only we have an option, and it isn't call up. It's not
Okay.
call up because we're out of pocket for the stock. We brought in money for the option. And so that's going to be our break even. Right. So our break even here is going to be what we paid for the stock. We paid for the stock 210. We brought in for the option 9 points. And so our break even is going to be 201. Now, again, if you're using pluses and minuses, which I think is a good way to go as well, I'll show it to you that way as well, as we could say, okay, well, that's out 210. And here is our hedge, our partial hedge. We are going to bring in, whoop, boom, boom, boom. We're out 210 and we're bringing in 9. And so when you net those two numbers, right, there's your plus. Those two numbers netted is 201, right? So we're net out of pocket 201. That's how we get to our break even. Is the one time and the one time only that we are subtracting to get. I think that's the other problem is all kinds of test takers say, call up, put down. Not here. This isn't call up because this is a covered call. So the first thing you said about your rules is you have to first identify this as a covered call, because if you don't identify this as a covered call, you're just going to be staring at it. Now, I like to spend a lot of time on what I call the setup. And I always, when I get an option contract, one thing I like to do is say, okay, what am I looking at? I'm looking at an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. And that part doesn't change. I mean, the contract specification doesn't change. What I mean by the contract specification doesn't change is that it always means when you sell a call that you're obligated to sell the stock at the strike. If you didn't want to do that, you shouldn't have brought in the money, right? I didn't want to spend 90 minutes with you. I shouldn't have taken your money, right? Eugenia did an opening purchase. You are long the tutoring session. I did an opening sale. I am short the tutoring session, right? So that's how we actually establish this position. Now, as you see here, let's put that here. This is going to be our money in, or in your case, if you like a plus, that's fine, or you could use a credit, whatever floats your boat, in terms of what's going on here. Let's put that in green for money in. Yeah, let's make that a little bigger. Boom. All right, so let's put this in test phraseology. Your customer buys 100 shares of Apple at 210. He's interested in generating additional income. What might you recommend? And you say short call, right? The other choice would be a long call and a short put. No. So that's our first thing, is to identify the reason you would do this. Suitability is to generate additional income. Or they might just give you the position. Your customer buys 100 shares of Apple at 210 and writes one Apple December 215 call at 9. What is the break even? Now, we said you can either memorize that. Now, I always warn people, if you start memorizing stuff, it's perfectly okay to do that. But the stuff you're going to have to memorize is going to continue to compound. Right? Your point, if we can get to the point of understanding, then you don't memorize anything. So I
Right.
say, okay. So I say, okay, I'm out 210 for the stock. I brought in 9 points for the option. So I'm net out of pocket 201. Net out of pocket is my break even, right? Or you can just memorize stock cost minus premium, 210 minus 9, 201. Or if you're using your pluses or minuses, I paid out 210, I brought in 9, I'm net out of pocket 201, however you get there. Now, here's what we mean by a partial hedge. Your maximum loss, you don't do this because of that partial hedge. If Apple goes to 0, you're still going to be unhappy. I'm going to say, Gina, your Apple went to 0, and instead of losing 210 per share, 21,000, you get to keep the $900. So you only lost 20,100. That sounds kind of stupid. I mean, you're still falling down. You're falling instead of falling down 210 flights of stairs, you're falling down 201 flights of stairs. You haven't moved the floor. The floor is still 0. And that's why we say it's a partial hedge, because you got 9 points of price decline protection. As we said, that's not why you're doing a covered call. You're not doing it because of the max loss, but the max loss, let's put that here, is when the stock goes all the way to 0, right? Max loss is your net out of pocket. Your net out of pocket 201. And so if that stock goes to 0, that's going to be your loss. Sometimes the way we say that is the break even to the
0.
right? The break even, because that's what your net out of pocket. That would be 20,100. As your tutor, I'm not too worried about you understanding that max loss, because that isn't really the issue. The issue here isn't the floor at 0. The issue, the testable issue, and this is the disadvantage of this strategy, is that you put in a ceiling at 215. You don't participate past the strike price. The way we say that is your gain is capped. And so this is when the Vanguard customer is going to be upset. They're going to be upset when this gets called away from them at 215. 215 or higher. And Apple's 240 or 250 or 260. They don't participate past the strike price. That is the disadvantage of a covered call, is you don't participate past the strike price. Now, that's the other thing you have to recognize, because if I say on the test, your client buys 100 shares of Apple at 210 and writes one Apple December 215 call at 9, at expiration, Apple is. Now, you need to
It
know
was
as a test taker, if Apple's 215 or higher, the contract is going to get exercised. Or this from your
at
study effort.
215.
That's right. Remember, because 3 things can happen to this option contract. This option contract can be traded. This option contract can be exercised. This option contract can expire. Right. And you should know 215 or higher, it's going to get exercised. And again, the person's going to be mad because they don't participate past the strike. So the more bullish you are, the higher the strike you should write. The less bullish you are, the lower the strike you would write. Lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. So
Okay, I have that written down and it didn't make as much sense to me.
yeah,
So lower
if we
strike,
agree to, always. So, when we're doing this, let's just go back. Boom. Let's just set this back up. And we're all the way back. Boom. There we go. Where first we got to recognize we have stock. And the first thing we recognize when we have stock is we're interested in the offset. If we bought the stock, we're interested in either having an obligation to sell the stock we own or a choice to sell the stock we own. There's no way this is going to be a long call or a short put. I didn't put the A choice in there, Gina. I didn't put the D choice in there because it's never going to be correct. So we're either,
see,
yeah,
that's, yeah, like this is what I mean by like the one thing that, and even my coworker said like this clicked for her way late as well, that it's like understanding the right to buy, obligation to sell
yeah.
is so basic, but
Well, yeah, good
forgetting it
point. And
right
you're
here.
absolutely right. So what we mean by that is you got to know that short call, let's just put it over here, right? In other words, it comes with practice and drilling and rehearsing. So you can't beat yourself up too much. But let's
Oh
just put
God,
this long
that's
put.
all I do.
Well, I joke, but it's, that is a choice to sell the stock. And, again, we're going to do that. But,
Mhm.
there's a difference between having a choice to sell stock you own,
Mm.
choice to sell stock you don't own. If you're establish a choice to sell stock you don't own, that's a speculative put. If you're
Mhm.
establishing the choice to sell stock you do own, that's a hedge. And I'm going to show that to you.
Mm.
And then, as we said, we're doing this one first. But this one, when you look at your point, it's basic. But, at some point, you can't be fumbling around it. That's an obligation
Mhm.
to sell the stock at the strike price, right? I
Right.
mean, that's what those basics are. There's two things that you want to kind of get to. If you can get good at contract specifications, that's what we're doing here, right? And you
Mhm.
can track money however you do it, you're going to get 100 on options, because at that point, there's no way to really fool you. So
Okay.
the reason I chose to show you a covered call first is because it's more likely that's what you're going to see on the test.
Right.
It's
That's
the
what you
most
said in the
conservative
video.
strategy, right? So we're going to write, now here we go again. So now we're doing a covered call. One of the premises of selling options is to agree to do something you're already willing to do. So if you are already willing to sell this Apple stock, why not get paid to do so? I say, Gina, if you'll agree to sell high Apple stock you bought low, somebody will pay you hundreds of dollars in advance to agree to sell high stock you bought low. In fact, there's three sources of profit. One source of profit is the dividends you receive on the Apple stock. That's yours to keep. A second source of profit is the premium we bring in, the 9 points we're going to bring in. And another source of profit is the difference between 210 and 215. You're going to make that 5. So 5 and 9, and the dividend is not a bad strategy. So we're going to write one Apple. Now, remember, we can only write one contract, right?
Mhm.
And we said we're going to go out to December because we're greedy. And
Wait,
we
can
know
I
that
can
we'll
I
get
just
more money.
clarify
Sure.
that you're writing only one contract because you bought only 100
That's
shares?
right. If I bought 1,000 shares of Apple, I could write 10 contracts.
Got it. Yes. Okay.
And then remember, there's no question about a ratio, right? But you could get asked about writing 2 contracts on 100 shares and recognizing that there's no partially naked, right? If you write more
Okay.
contracts than you have stock, you're going to be in trouble, right? So longer term
Hmm.
option have contracts have greater premiums. And now I say, Gina, as your broker, lower strike call contracts have greater premiums. If
Hmm.
we'll agree to sell at a lower price, we'll get a greater premium. Now, the disadvantage of that lower strike is we're not going to participate past that. We're about to put in a ceiling here. So the more bullish we are, the higher the strike we're going to write. The less bullish we are, the lower the strike we're going to write. I say, how do you feel about getting paid $900, 9 points to agree to sell the Apple at 215 that you bought at 210? You say, wow, I mean, that sounds wonderful. I say, yeah, somebody will give us 9 points for that. And boom, now we get to put that in here. And that does indeed lower your out of pocket cost. Now, as I said, I'd like to think of options as being about floors and ceilings. And what's not bueno about this strategy is we have put in a ceiling here at 215. We don't participate past the strike price, right? We're going to have to give up the stock. And then, as I told you, what I like to do, it's not testable, but this is contract specifications. So I like to, underneath that leg, not testable, it's called a leg. Okay, I've
Hmm.
got an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. And then I said the other thing we got to know is it doesn't matter that that's a short call, and because the stock dominates. As I told you, the most common thing that people mess up is they forget the stock dominates. So they're looking at that and they're going, oh, it's a 215 call. My break even is 224, unlimited loss potential. A max gain is the premium. No, that is not a speculative option position. It is a covered call. You can't let the tail wag the dog. Okay, so I told you we consider this to be a partial hedge because we are getting some price decline protection. We lowered our out of pocket cost from 210 to 201. And
Mhm.
break evens are really important because if you can get the break even, then you can use it as kind of a pivot to answer other questions. And so here you can either memorize it, you could have a T, there's a lot of ways to go. You can use your pluses and minuses, but ultimately break even is the number that makes the columns balance because that's what break even is, same dollars out as dollars in. And I'm just illustrating that if 201, we plug it in there. You say, Dean, I lost 9 points on the stock. I go, you did, but remember you got 9 up front, so you're still breaking even. You got some price decline protection. I'm just illustrating that indeed that is the break even. If you get good with a T, you shop your answer set, boom. We said you could memorize the break even. We said it's stock cost less premium. It's the one time and the one time only that
And
we have.
that's just for covered calls, right?
That's right. It's the only time we're minusing it in that. And so again, we can say here, we can either memorize it and we could say, okay, well, we paid for the stock 210. We're bringing in for the option 9. And so our break even is 201.
So then what did we say was the max
One
gain,
more
max
point.
loss?
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
done working on it. Right. And then we said you could also, if you're using your pluses or minuses, you could say, okay, well, we brought in 9 for the option, but we paid out 210 for the stock. And so the net of the plus and the minus is 201, right? And so there's your plus minus version, right? So that's it. Now, okay. So now your point, we got our break even. So when we're doing max loss, sounds like you like rules, right? So max loss means we're wrong, right? And so if we know we're bullish, then we know the stock going down is going to be bad. So we know when we're asked if I'm a bear and they ask me max loss, I know it's the stock goes against me. Goes against me means the direction that I'm not looking for, right? I'm looking for Apple to go up because I own the stock. So what I'm afraid of is that the stock is going to go down. And how far down could the stock go?
To just the strike price.
No, to 0.
80. Okay.
Right?
So
If the stock goes to 0, there's our max loss. Our max loss is the break even to 0.
That's
Right?
where I got tripped up, break even to 0. And then when we were talking about the ceiling being
That's right.
215.
The floor is still 0. You're going to
Okay.
fall down 201 flights of stairs. So the loss here, the max loss is 201 a share, which is $20,100 would be our max loss. Right? And then our max gain, we said that's important for us. And the max gain is going to be when we deliver the stock. We don't participate past the strike price. That is our max gain. And again, we can either get good at the T or we can actually say, okay, well, we could say our break even is 201. That's what we're net out of pocket, 201. We got to sell the stock at 215. So our max gain, a couple ways they get it. Max gain is break even to strike. Right. What I mean by that is we're out of pocket 201. We have to sell the stock at what price? 215. And so there's our max gain. You can either memorize it again, or you could say, I make 5 points there and 9 points, the 5 and the 9, right? Let me get out my thing here. A lot of ways to think about it. I can make from 210 to 215. That's 5 points plus my 9 for a total of 14. By the way, if you get good at the T, you could net the two numbers and say, okay. Now remember, there's no number that can go in that column past 215. Right? You have to give up that stock at 215. So there's no number going in here that is going to be more than that. And again, I could just net the columns and say, there is our max gain. Remember, the biggest thing to know is we don't participate past the strike. We don't participate past the strike. All right, so let's go back. Let's do the reset. The initial setup will always be the same, the initial setup. And then we do whatever the question says, right? So they say your customer buys 100 shares of Apple at 210, writes an Apple December 215, call at 9. Which of the following is true?
Mm.
Or they love this one. All the following are true, except.
Mhm.
And then, by the way, I like the except format because in that format, I can ask you everything: the break even, the max gain, the max loss, and then the D choice will be something that's not correct. So, first test potential test question is what is the break even? Now, if you do the setup correctly, as I said, I think that's pretty good. Or if you're using your minuses, that's fine. If you're using your minuses, you say, well, I'm out 210 and I brought in 9 points. And so I'm net out of pocket 201. However, you get there, who cares how you get there, just as long as you get there. But it is testable to tell me that the break even in this is 201. Please note, it's the one time and the one time only. It isn't call up.
Mhm.
We are actually subtracting to get the break even.
Mhm.
Actually subtracting, right? So 201s are break even. All right. I told you I wouldn't worry too much about the loss because we're not doing the short call as a hedge. What I mean by that is we're still going to be pissed off to, if Apple goes to zero. If Apple goes to zero, you're going to lose less money than had you not done the covered call. But you're still unhappy because if it goes to zero, you're going to lose $210 per share on the Apple stock, but you get to keep the 9. Whoop-de-doo.
Mhm.
You're still unhappy. So your maximum loss is $201 per share. Break even to zero. What I mean by 2 zeros, when Apple goes from 201 to zero, you're going to lose $201 per share. You're going to
Is
lose.
this the same? Is this the same thing that we were just doing before,
Yeah, that's
or
the
is
same.
this different? Okay.
Yeah, it's the same situation. We're,
Okay.
we're just going. I'm putting it in test phraseology now.
Right.
So now they
Right.
said
Yeah.
the client buys 100 shares of Apple at 210 per share, writes an Apple 215, call it 9. All the following are true
Mhm.
except choice A says the break even's 201. We say, oh, okay, A is true. Remember, we're looking for things
Yeah.
that are true, right? Choice B
Okay.
choice B says the maximum loss is $201 per share or 20,100. We go, that's true. And
Mhm.
choice C says the max gain, and we're doing the same thing here, is maybe choice C says the max gain is 14 points or $1,400. And again, the way we say that is the break even to the strike price. You
Mhm.
don't participate past the strike price.
Mhm.
That is the disadvantage of a covered call. I used to send every customer a happy letter or a big boy, big girl letter when they write covered calls. Gene, I want you to acknowledge to me that you understand that if you get exercised, you're going to be delivering the stock at less than the current market price. You're going to be delivering the stock at 215 and Apple is somewhere north of that. So again, you can either do the source of profit. You can say 5 points from 210 to 215 plus the 9 for 14. Or you could say I'm net out of pocket 201 and I have to deliver the stock at 215. However you get there, that is our next test question. All right, so now let's do a test phraseology where they don't give you the max gain or max loss. They actually tell you something like this. So here we go back all the way back to zero. Your customer buys 100 shares of Apple at 210 per share, writes one Apple December 215 call at 9. At expiration, Apple is 221. Apple is at 221. What is your customer's max gain or max loss? And then you have 4 choices. Now, remember what we kind of were trying to say here is you need to recognize. So here we go with common mistakes. A lot of people will memorize the break even of 201. And then they've been taught that you can just compare that to the market price, and that's the gain or loss. So if that's what you've been doing, and you've memorized the break even, and you say, oh, that's a 20-point gain. It is not a 20-point gain because you have to give up the stock at the what?
Strike price.
Your max gain. The answer to the question is you made 14 points. Right. So that's where this becomes an issue, is when people are memorizing break evens and don't recognize this idea of the floor and the ceiling. Right. You don't participate past the strike. All right, let's show
And
you.
that's only for these covered calls.
That's right. That's what we're working on. We're working on covered calls first, because you could easily get 4 or 5 covered calls. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Now, let me just grab one here. Boom. Do 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 do. Short intervention here. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Let me go find you. Where are you at? There you are. Boom. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
See the screen?
Yes.
So here we go. Now I've labeled this 6, Gina. And who cares? I'm just telling you why I've labeled it.
Mm-hmm.
There are 9 option strategies you're held accountable for.
Okay.
Right. And so, I think a lot of times people think, oh my God, there's a gazillion things. No, there's not. There's 9 option strategies. And Gina, even if identifying the option strategy wasn't testable, it is.
Okay.
Even if it wasn't, it is. If you can't identify it, the problem is,
Right.
people just kind of freak out and they go, oh my God, it's just too much stuff. There's only 2 types of options, calls and puts. Can you see that?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so, as I told you, I'm not too concerned as your tutor, because it's common. I don't know if it makes you feel better. I don't know. Misery loves company. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it's common that people either get this side, the hedges, and don't get this side, the speculative positions,
Really? Okay.
or vice versa.
Okay.
So, you told me that you feel pretty good. Well, by the way, it's usually, my good news for you. It's usually the people who are struggling with this and not that. So, I mean, that's good news. I mean,
I think
as
I
your
think like
tutor,
for
yep.
yeah, and as my tutor, like it's important for me to like really stress the fact that like I am good at memorizing stuff. I
Yeah.
am not good conceptually.
Well, that's good.
Like
That's good.
I can
So,
remember Sato, Soda, and understanding how to identify a spread and a
that's
straddle.
right. No, that's great. Yeah, no, that's good. But hey, nobody cares how you get it right, just as long as you get it right, right?
Well,
So here's
I'm struggling to understand it.
well,
Like
that's
that's the
okay.
thing. Like everything about why
Okay, well, here's where we're
someone.
at right now. We're right here as we're doing stock positions plus option positions. And the first
Right.
rule that we said, Gina, in this discussion we're having today, is you've
Mhm.
got to let the stock dominate. You've got to
Yeah.
stay focused on the stock position. And we said you're
Mhm.
always interested in the offset. So if you bought the stock, we bought the Apple, that's where we're at presently. We want
Mhm.
to offset with selling the stock. So that means it's going to be
Mhm.
either a short call or a long put. And then we said for protection, we're going to buy the option. We haven't done that yet. For income, we're
Mhm.
going to sell the option. That's what we're working on right now. We're working on a covered call. So
Okay.
first test question, this is a covered call. So remember, this sounds pretty decent. I say, Gina, how would you like to agree to sell high stock you just bought low? Somebody will give you $700 to
Mhm.
oblige yourself to sell the stock that you just bought at 40 for 45. That
Mhm.
sounds like, right? And we said this is called a covered call because you're actually agreeing to sell stock you actually have. And as we said, the most common thing that people get messed up on is they're looking at this and going, oh, it's a call up 52, max gain premium, max break even 52, max gain is premium, max loss unlimited. No. As I said, the biggest number one rule is first to look at the question and say, is there stock in the question? Is there stock in the question you're looking at? If there's no stock, then you go right to your matrix and it's a speculative option position. If there's no stock in the setup, here there's the stock. And we said the minute we get a stock position, that is what's dominating. So we got to say this is bullish. And we said that's important because we want the stock to go up and we're going to be happy if it does. And we're going to be unhappy if it goes down if we're a bull. Right. So that's kind of helpful for us in terms of our analysis. Okay. So we said the other thing we kind of want to recognize is options are about floors and ceilings. And when you write a call, here there's a ceiling. There would be no ceiling, by the way, if it was a naked call, but this is a floor because you own the stock, or excuse me, a ceiling. You're not participating past 45. That's kind of one of the big things, right? And we said, why would you do this? We said you do this to generate additional income. I say, hey, you got that ABC in your Vanguard account, Gina. One of the conservative option strategies that you can deploy is called covered call writing or buy right. And, we'll assume I'm a full service broker. And I say, hey, Gina, I'm just looking at the ABC September 45 calls. You own the ABC at 40, and I'm looking at the ABC September 45 calls, and somebody will give us 7 points or $700 to agree to sell at 45 stock we just bought at 40. Yeah, we can use that to lower out-of-pocket cost on the stock. We can use it to meet our margin call. We do get some price decline protection. We have 3 ways we can make some money here. We can make the difference between 40 to 45. We get the 7 points, and we gain dividends along the way. So that's why somebody does it. So break even is always where we start first. So when we buy 100 shares of at 40, is that money out or is that money in?
That's out. So I was able to calculate the break even. So 40 out, I have 40 out and 7 in.
So the break even is
33.
You're correct.
Really quick, going back when we were talking about floors and ceilings. So the ceiling being obviously the strike price, is the floor 0?
Yeah, the floor is 0. That's right.
Now, is the floor always 0?
For a cover call, yeah. So here's the floor, right? There's your same setup.
Right.
So there's the 40, there's the 7, and there's our loss. And as I said, I don't worry as your tutor, you're taking the test about the max loss in a covered call because that's not really why you're doing it. Right. I mean, that's not the point. I mean, the point is, yes, you fall down 33 flights of stairs now instead of 40, but that's still painful. Right. It expires, and you do this to generate additional income, right? So 40 out. And now we've your point, we had a break even. You were correct. And then we said, this is the disadvantage to the strategy. We said you have to give up the stock at the strike price. If you didn't want to give up that stock at 45, you shouldn't have done that. So there's a couple ways now to answer this question. You can tell me that the max gain is 12 points, and there's several ways to get to the max gain being 12 points. You can say, I make 5 plus the 7, that's 12. You can net the T. Or if you want to use your pluses and minuses, that works too. You could say, I'm net out of pocket 33, and I have to sell the stock at 45. That's another way to get to the 12 points, so the break even to the strike price. Right. So there's several ways. By the way, with all math, that's the case. There's several ways to do the math here. Right.
So sorry,
no, don't be sorry at all.
Okay.
No.
So
remember, you're along the tutoring, Gina. Go ahead.
That just went a little fast. So, okay, so I understand that we're still out the same, we're still in the same. And I understand that we cannot go above the 45. That's our
Yeah, that's the
ceiling.
trick, right? So I told you that's the trick where most people get hung up who've tried to memorize things and say, Dean, I'm still struggling, even though I'm a great memorization person. As I told you, the trick here is if I tell you test phraseology, you buy 100 shares of ABC at 40, and you write an ABC September 45, call it 7. And then I
Mm-hmm.
tell you that at expiration,
Mm,
ABC is 52, you've got to
mm-hmm.
recognize that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I
Mm-hmm.
tell you 46, 52,
Mm-hmm.
80, 90, does not matter because you're never going to sell that stock for more than
Mm-hmm.
45,
45.
right? So that's the key in terms of where people get hung up. Now, in terms of practice questions, let me show you how they ask this.
So wait, so what was the max gain then?
Max gain is 12 points. We said you can
12
either do
points.
that. We said, let me just go back. You can
So
either
I
get,
have, go ahead.
you either can do max gain a couple different ways. One, you can simply memorize that the max gain in a covered call is the break even 33 to the strike, 45, 12 points. Break even to the strike.
Okay, and it got it. So, okay, so then it would be 33,
Yeah.
45 to strike,
Yeah.
and
If
you're just finding
you're
the
using
difference.
your pluses or minuses, let me just show your pluses or minuses. Right. There's
Right,
your minus here on the 40 for the stock, right?
right.
And then you brought in, and you got this correct. You brought in 7 points for the option. And you told me, and you were correct. You said, Dean, I'm net out of pocket 33, and you were correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And now the most you're going to bring in is 45.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the 12 points again.
12, got it. Okay.
Right. Or you could do the T however you want to get there. All right. Now, how do we test you on that? Here's a couple examples of some test questions. Your customer is interested in generating additional income on a long stock position. Now, when you hear income, you should immediately, as a test taker, know that it's got to be either this,
Short call or short put.
it's got to be one of those because that's income, right?
Right.
So here it's
And
going to,
that's just from memorizing my chart.
well,
So,
that's okay. I told you nobody's going to give you grief for that. I mean, right
okay.
answers are right answers. Where that lets you down maybe is when we do something like this. Let me give you a quick practice question. Boom, boom,
And
boom.
then the long side is the hedging side, the short side is
I'm
the
going to
income
show that
side.
to you next. We're just getting ready to clean this up here. And I just want to show you test phraseology again. And here is some test phraseology as it relates to covered calls. Boom, there we go. A A customer owns 100 shares of stock and wishes to generate additional income on that stock. What option strategy would you recommend?
Well, if I could talk through this just to
Absolutely.
see if I'm understanding it. So, this is where I would get tripped up originally because it doesn't say, it says that he owns it, he's not long or short. But
He's
do you
long.
have,
You're long.
he's long?
Say you own 100 shares of stock is the same as saying
He
you're long.
bought it.
Yeah.
Okay. So he bought it. So then that means he would,
The
he
key
would
word, income,
buy.
right?
Yeah.
No, you never
I'm
buy
sorry,
for income.
sell. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he bought it and then he would short this, the income side is the short side. So he would sell it and he would sell a covered or a covered call because that's an income side.
That's exactly what you do. And that's a test question, right?
Okay.
That is the suitability of that position, right?
Okay.
Let's see if we got another one here for you to try. Boom, boom, boom. Let's try our next one. All right. So back to our situation here. Let me get rid of this. All right. So if you have a stock position, as we said, if you have a stock position What you're interested in doing is the offset, right?
Mhm.
So here's our board, boom. That's our initial setup. So I showed you a covered call. Now I'm going to show you a protective put. A put that is protecting the stock position, right? So we know that it's either short the call or long the put. And the key pivot words are income versus protection, right? Gina, are you protected? Well, what does that mean? I said, Gina, do you have insurance today
Mm.
in your car and you drive off the back home? Are you protected? You say, no, I'm naked. I go, Gina, really? You mean you don't have any auto insurance? I'm surprised. Does Pennsylvania let you go down the road naked without any insurance? I think you're supposed to have insurance, right? So insurance isn't about what if you're right. Insurance is about what if you're wrong, right? And you have to pay your premium for insurance, right? I got a little fender bender and I got out of the car and I said, hey, are you all right? The guy said, yeah. I said, good news. I'm properly insured. It's not a problem. My insurance company's going to take care of everything. So, building a soft grid location here. And, I have contractors on roofs and stuff, and I haven't added this to my insurance policy. I said, man, I got to call my agent because, something can seriously go wrong here. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we're going to buy for protection. How many contracts do we need to protect the 100 shares of Apple in our account? How many contracts do we need to protect the 100 shares of Apple in our account?
Can I rewind for 1 second? I'm so sorry. So when you're doing a covered call, it's opposite actions, but when you're doing a protective
opposite action. You bought the stock, you want to sell the stock.
Okay, so we're doing a protective put
both
now.
of these are opposite actions, right? Both of them are opposite actions. What we mean by that is you bought the stock, and here is the opposite action. The opposite action is to sell the stock, right? That is
okay. So what's the red buy? Sorry.
We bought 100 shares of Apple at 210.
Okay, sorry. I thought we were doing a new one. Okay, so you bought it.
No,
okay.
In both positions, when we're long the stock, we're interested in the opposite action, which is to sell the stock. We're either going to do covered calls for income, or we're going to buy a put for protection.
Okay.
Right? Those are the two. Now, the reason I chose to start with a covered call is there's more Vanguard customers doing covered calls than any other option strategy. It's like level 1 approval to get approved at Vanguard to be able to write options, right? On stocks you own, right? I doubt Vanguard's going to let you, do naked uncovered calls. Okay, so now we're looking at a hedge, but your point about opposite market action is, again, the opposite of buying the stock is to be able to sell the stock. And there's two option positions where you end up selling stock. Your matrix works for this. The two positions where you end up selling the stock are short call and long put. So we know that even before I add this, let's just go back here. Even before I add that, that with this position, it's either going to be B or C, because that is the opposite. If I bought the stock, I'm interested in selling the stock. I either want to have an obligation to sell the stock for income or choice to sell the stock for protection. So we can buy one. We need only one contract. The only reason we need one contract is because we only have 100 shares, right? If we had 200 shares, we'd want two contracts. If we had 300 shares, we'd want three contracts. Each contract governs 100 shares. I still think you should do things on a per share basis than when you're done. Apple, now we have to decide, Gina, how long we want the protection in place. The longer we want the protection in place, the more money it's going to cost us. Longer term option contracts always have greater premiums. So I don't know, maybe we go out till December. Very important. We're doing construction. We're putting in a floor. We're moving the floor up from 0 to whatever the strike price of our put is. A choice to sell the Apple that we own at a higher strike will give us greater protection, but it will also cost us more money. Higher strike put contracts always have greater premiums. Choice to sell at higher prices are more desirable, and you have to pay accordingly. I have now, Gina, said 3 things in this tutoring session. The mantra is lower, higher, longer. Lower, higher, longer. Lower, higher, longer. Lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. Longer term option contracts always have greater premiums, and higher strike put contracts always have greater premiums. So if we have a choice to sell at 205, that's going to be better protection than 200. It's going to cost us more money. So we're going to go for a 205 put contract. As I said, Apple's a pretty volatile stock. Test question. Apple's a pretty volatile stock as compared to the market. What's the fancy dancy term for volatility as compared to the market?
Oh,
Apple
come
has
on.
a high beta.
Okay.
High beta. And so
That's
the
in like
option
in
premiums,
is that really what I have to know for like index strategies and stuff?
not indexes like Gina, right? What's the beta on the Vanguard S&P 500 index fund? 1. Whatever that market does, that's what that Vanguard fund does, right?
Right.
It's
Okay.
embarrassing to active managers, by the way, because Vanguard can say, our index fund is in the top 10% of all mutual funds because we never underperform the market. we never underperform the market because it is the market. Right. So by the way, all I'm illustrating here, it's not testable, is this concept of volatilities that relates to option premiums. We're going to pay more premiums for option contracts on stocks that move around because, it's the nature of the game, so to speak. And let's say we can get this for 6. All right. So is that 6? Is that money out or money in?
If you bought it, it's money out.
Now, again, this is where, again, people get hung up. People say, oh, Dean, I know the break even is 205 minus 6. It's 219. My max loss is the $600, the 6 points. I'm a bear and I want the stock to go 0. So 219 to 0. This is not an option position. This is a stock position. And when you have stock and options, you cannot let the option tail wag the stock dog. Now, your matrix still works in terms of contract specifications. This has and always will be a choice to sell the stock at the strike price. Now, the distinction here, though, is you actually have the stock. And that's a different thing. When you have a put on stock you actually own. Neat thing, we have now moved the floor from 0 to 205. Construction costs money. So it's kind of cool that we have now moved that floor to that price. We're doing this for protection. All right. So first test question. What is the break even? People don't do things to break even. This is
Can I ask a question first? Because I want to walk through this, but I think my original question when I was saying, like, when we were going over the covered calls in relation to the protective puts, is that with the call, it was different action. You were buying and writing. With the put, you bought 100 shares.
Money out. Yeah. So the different.
So for protective.
Yeah. Go ahead.
For protection, you'd always buy it because you're buying it for protection, right?
I'd always.
Okay. So that's how you can kind of tell that it's a protective put over a covered call, is because
that's right.
Okay. So then if you bought the shares at 210 and you bought the contracts at 6, then your total out is 216.
That's right. That's your break.
Okay.
This is one time, and the one time only. It's not put down. And the reason it's not put down to get the break even, because this is not a put contract. This is the one thing
Yeah, and
that's
that's easier for me to understand solely because of the T chart, because it's just like if it's money out, then that means it's
that's
money
right.
out. Like,
That's right. Boom. And that means if you get good at the T, right, or your pluses or minuses, either
right.
one, the break even is the number that balances the columns because that's what
Okay.
break is, same dollars out
Right.
as dollars in. So assuming, again, you get good at whether you're plusing or minusing this thing, then you can say, okay, well, I need a number that's offered to me as break even. You're out 210 for the apple. You're
Hmm.
out 6 points for the protection. So
Hmm.
you're out a total of 216,
Right. Okay.
right? There's your pluses and minuses, right?
Hmm.
And it's the same action. So you're in your same action story, right? Same action, buy, buy. If it's
Hmm.
a buy, buy, we're adding 216 to get it. If it's a opposite action, we're buying and selling, we're netting,
Hmm.
right? So when we did the covered call, we were netting because it was different action. It was a buy of the
Hmm.
stock and a sell of the option, right?
Yes.
Okay, so onward and upward. That's our break even. As we said, nobody does things to break even.
Hmm.
I wouldn't worry about the max gain on this one. And the reason
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about the max gain is that we're not doing this hedge for the gain, right?
Hmm.
We still have unlimited gain. There is no ceiling here. And if the stock goes to 300, you say, Daystine, we wasted our money for the 205 put. I said, well, Gina, we didn't buy the put in case we were right. We bought the put in case we were wrong,
Hmm.
right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Apple allows Chat GPT to make an update to the iPhones and it accidentally shuts down all the iPhones.
Hmm.
Oh my God. You
Hmm.
know, Apple's going to tank. No worries for us. No worries for us because anytime we want, we can sell the stock at the strike price. That is going to be our worst case scenario. Now, again, you can either memorize or you can say, okay, well, if you're doing your pluses or minuses, I know I can always bring back in 205.
Hmm.
And so now the most I can lose is 216, break
Now, are
even.
you saying that you could bring in the 205 because you could just go ahead and sell
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
exercise my put, right? That's going to be
So
my
is
worst case.
the same rule applies here where you can never go, like with the cover call, you can't go above the strike
That's
price? Is the same
that's
rule
exactly right.
apply here?
Options are all about floors and ceilings. Options
Okay.
are all about floors and ceilings. And in the covered call, we had a ceiling, and in this, we have a floor. By the way, this is a good thing, Gina, because now instead of falling down 210 flights of stairs, we only
Hmm.
fall down, what is it, 11 flights of stairs.
Hmm.
And that's why we do that. Test question. The reason we do this is to have the ability to participate in a big price increase, but not participate in a big price decline. And again, if I'm a option register option principal at Vanguard, and I say, "What's the guy want to do?" And he says, "Dean, he wants to buy puts on stocks that he owns." I say, "Oh, what a smart guy! Not a problem. That's a very smart thing to be able to do in terms of risk mitigation." So this is much different than somebody who is just buying this put to speculate on Apple going down, right? That is a speculator who does this, just buys that put. That's a speculator. This is not a speculative transaction.
Hmm.
Speculative transaction. Okay, let me show you this again. So let boom
So the max gain we decided because we
on the
calculated the 216 with the 205.
that's right. That's our max loss. All right, let's try it, show it to you again. So we said that when we're long a stock, we have two stock positions at Vanguard. Our customers can either be long the stock or they can be short the stock. Those are our two stock positions. We're working in this session on being long the stock. I don't know why I did that. Let me fix that. And we said if you're long the stock, own the stock, you'd be interested in being able to sell the stock. In your
Mhm.
matrix works, you have two option positions where somebody can end up selling the stock that they own. And we said those two positions are they can be long a put for protection, or they can be short the call for income. And so here we go. Here's a protective put. Now I'm labeling it number 5 because we're simply saying that of the 9 option strategies, this is the 5th thing you're held accountable for. And these are hedges. So first thing we said in terms of our rules is if we're reading a test question and they tell us the guy has a stock position, we need not read any further because we know stock dominates.
Mhm.
So we know, regardless what option comes, that this is a bullish transaction. And we know
Can I
before.
ask a, can I
Yep,
ask a question that might be stupid?
absolutely.
It just helps me. So when I was talking earlier about how I wanted you to teach me hedging,
Yep,
is that exactly what we're talking about? Hedging is those protective strategies
that's
and
exactly right.
the okay. So hedging is really just consisting of those long positions, and
Right.
then short positions are the
Hedging.
income strategies.
Yeah. And here we go, right? Here it is, hedging summary. Boom. Now, don't make fun of
Okay.
my bull. Don't make fun of him, but he's not very intimidating. Here he is, right? Here's right. And we said if
Oh, he's
you're long
cute.
the stock, we know it's either going to be, before I even do the reveal, we know you're either going to short the call for income
Hmm.
or buy the put for protection.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So here's our first one. The full hedge is to buy the put. What we mean by full hedge is
Mm.
full protection at the strike price. You can make
Okay.
it happen. So if I say somebody wants the most protection, that's what you're going to say, right? Now,
So full
if we
hedge is
want
a
income,
long call with a long put.
that's right. And if you want income, there's our partial, right?
Hmm.
There's our partial. Now, what we haven't talked about in this session is how to effectively hedge the short stock position. But here we go, right? Here's a test question. The most protection on a long stock position is C, long a put. Long a put, right? And then we did this generate additional income,
Okay.
right? So now we're showing you
Okay.
another protected put. And we said that if we have the stock, we know that the stock dominates. And we know as a test taker, when we're reading the questions, as your customer buys 100 shares, you go, oh, it's a hedge. He's
Mhm.
either going to be doing a covered call, right? And that's what you meant
Mhm.
by opposite action, right? It's going to be a buy,
Mhm.
sell, buy, buy, sell. We
So
know
this
that
is
it's a, yeah. So now we
so
have a
this one
choice.
here would be a full hedge, right?
That's right, full hedge. And so we're out 40 for the stock. We paid 3 points for the protection. It looks like I don't have the fly in here. Put
Hmm.
on the fly. So boom. We're out 40 for the stock. Stock dominates. We brought in for the paid out for the option 3.
Hmm.
Break even is 43. Buy
Got it.
adding. So you can either memorize stock cost plus premium or minus 40, minus 3, net out of pocket 43,
Hmm.
right? Max gain is unlimited because you don't have to sell the stock if you don't want to. So you still have a limited gain. We said that's not why you do it. You do this because you have put in a floor. Anytime you want, you can exercise your put, your choice to sell. So you're out 40 and you're out 3 points for the insurance. You bought insurance on this stock position. And you know that the worst case scenario is that you will exercise your put and be able to sell the stock at 35. And so your maximum loss, again, you can either memorize it, is break even 43 to the strike 35, break even to strike, or you can just, plot it out and say, well, my worst case is, here I'm going to lose 5 points on the stock. I spent 3 points for the protection. So my max loss here is 8 points.
Okay, so got it because it went down
Yeah.
40. Wait, 8 points.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, because
Because we're out
because
43. and we can sell at 40, 35. That's 8 points difference, right?
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So those are our hedges, right? So boom, 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 and boom, boom, boom.
So with the max gain on that example, was that just like I could have just gotten that from my master chart?
Yeah, yeah, there's no ceiling. So that means you do participate. As we said, let me go back here. Here's where most people get caught. If you're memorizing break evens, so here's the one we just did, right? And I say
Mhm.
your customer buys 100 shares of ABC. And so let's just put your break even here, and your break even is 43.
Mhm.
And a lot of people have been taught, correctly or incorrectly, whatever, on their own, that if you get the break even, that's your pivot, and you can just compare the market price to whatever. And so now let me just show you where that breaks down if you don't understand this concept of floor and ceiling. If you buy 100 shares of ABC at 40, so your client buys 100 shares of ABC at 40, buys an ABC September 35, put at 3. At expiration, ABC is 20. Now, somebody who's
Uh,
break evens is going to tell me that that's a 23-point loss or a 23-point gain. No, because it doesn't matter. Once it goes below 35, that is the put. You're not selling for anything less than 35. So it doesn't matter on the test if I tell you the stock's 34 or 20 or 15 or it's 0, it doesn't matter. And the
so it
reason,
can't go above or below that
well, no, it can
35.
go above. It can go above that. It's unlimited gain,
Okay.
but it can't
Oh,
go.
right, right, right. Can't go below.
That's what I've been trying to stress is this idea that's where most people get hung up when they're memorizing, right? If they're memorizing stuff and they go, well, and they don't recognize there's a floor there at 35, and they're
Right,
making comparisons of the numbers. They've memorized break evens, and they like
right,
you memorize the break evens 43 and it's 20, and you say, oh, it's at 23 points. No, that is not
right.
correct. Right. That's what I mean by about that floor. Now, where you were right
So,
about the same action, right? So the way you've been doing it sounds like it's Ken Finnan's method, but you're the same action means 40 and 30, right? 40 and 3. So the same action, bye bye. Bye bye
mhm.
means 43, right?
I think I got confused at the floor ceiling because this is different from the covered calls when it was saying don't participate
Yeah,
past
that's
the
right. That's right.
expert.
Gain is capped. In a covered call, capped gain is the way we say that. You don't participate past that strike price,
So
right?
then
And here,
how can I remember that this is you can't go below it? So is
well, I
because
think
that's
when you
the
do I think the best place to do that, I think, is in your initial setup, your
mhm.
initial setup, right? So here is again R1. I'll ask you. You buy 100 shares of Facebook at 262, and you buy one Facebook 255 put at 3. So Gina, is the put your choice to sell at 255? Is that the floor or is that the ceiling?
Sorry, I have to write it for me
Oh, no worries. No worries. No worries.
to look at it. By okay, what's the question one more time?
My question is, you say, how do I know it's a floor or ceiling? So I say, this is a 255 put, you bought it. It's a choice to sell the stock you own at 255. Is that a
Mhm.
floor or a ceiling? Is that put a floor or a ceiling?
The floor.
Right on. So now your same action thing, right? So your break even is same action, 262 and 3. So you should be able to tell me
Mhm.
the break even is.
Let me write it down really quick. So L 265.
Right on. And then remember, this is the point. That's your break even. And we said, now it doesn't matter in the test if I tell you that stock, Facebook is below 255, because you can always exercise the put. And so you're not going to participate in any price lower than 255. You are not participating in any price less than that. So you're out 265, and you can sell the stock anytime you want by exercising your put at 255. And so your
So it's
max
10.
loss is 10 points. All right. All right. Let's give you another one. Let's give you another one. Now, the reason again, Dean doesn't have the max gain in here is because it's not germane to the question. There's no ceiling
Right.
here. There is no ceiling. Here's another one for you to try. Okay, so you have an obligation to sell at 270. That's contract specifications. You have an obligation to sell at 270. So is that a floor or a ceiling?
Um, that would be a ceiling.
You're correct. You're not participating past 270. Now, this is where you're going to do well on your break evens. This is different action, right? So you paid out 262 for the Facebook, and you brought in for the option 8. So you did indeed lower your out-of-pocket cost. You lowered your out-of-pocket frost from 262 to the break even of 254. This is the one time and the one time only. We have a call contract and we're not adding. The break even is 254. And
Okay.
it paid 254 net out of pocket. And we said this is where most people get hung up again. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what price I tell you above 270, 272, 290, 300. You do not participate
Above
past the
it.
strike. That's your ceiling, right? So the most you're going to bring into this account, the most is 270. And so there's a lot of ways to get that max gain. You can net those two numbers, or you can plug the 270 in here. The max gain in this situation is 16 points.
Mm, wait. Two. I'm sorry. Okay, wait. So 270, got it. And that would be two. So you got that by 278 minus 262.
Yeah, you could do it either
Okay.
way. I told you there's lots of ways to do it. I personally, I like to just use my T and I just net the two numbers. But you could say you were net.
Right.
You said you like to do pluses or minuses. They both work. So 260.
Okay.
What I do
I'm
is
just
they.
trying to keep. I'm
Oh,
I'm
it's
only trying to keep it like the
okay.
same.
Well, well, whatever you're doing, I told you, process is the most important thing. I
Right.
think that this is kind of what you're doing, and that's fine. So we were net
Yeah.
out of pocket 254, and we have to sell at 270. By the way, that is the break even to the strike price.
All right.
All right.
270.
All right. Let's try a couple practice questions.
So then while you're looking for that, so is hedging, am I done with hedging then if I know this?
We didn't get to short stocks in today's session, but it's not as testable as covered calls. So
Okay.
what we didn't get to is how to hedge a short stock position. It would be the opposite. We're going to buy a call. I think you have
Okay.
options taxation on your list as well. We didn't get that today.
I need, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I can always try to
mhm.
do taxation like,
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I think it's more people get themselves hung up on it. We did that one already. Boom. Let's see if we got another one. We did that one. Here we go. An investor is short. We didn't do short stocks yet. Hold on. You said you're pretty good at that one. I'm just saying we have another practice question here. There we go. No, I thought I had another covered call here. I looks like I don't. Okay.